Welcome to the Real Truth About Hormones, your Women's Health Masterclass series.
We're your hosts, Dr. Shawn Tassone and Dr. Nat Kringoudis. Now, in this bonus interview that I think is really, really awesome, we're going to discuss what you can do to impact your hormones immediately in order to kickstart your body and get the best and fast results. And I'm just going to tell you that between the two of us, we've treated tens of thousands of women, and I don't think I have, and I can't speak for you, but I would imagine you agree, we've not come across one person who says they don't want it faster and better.
No, always. But the thing I do with that, to speak to that, is I'm always about what is the least amount that you can get someone to do to get the most profound changes, because that's actually how you can keep the ball rolling. Whereas if we were to say to our patients, let's give you the overhaul, and here is the big long list of things that you have to do, no one does that.
But also it's like if you want fastest and you want, bang for your buck, that's going to be hormones, bioidentical hormones. I have patients that come in that are taking even something like pregnenolone. And I'm like, look, if your estrogen or testosterone is low, why are we taking pregnenolone? Because then you've got to filter down into estrogen or testosterone. Let's take the estrogen or the testosterone. If you want prescription, if you want fast, but also with that, you get side effects, you get potential riskier issues.
I would also like to say that if you can get it right, and now I'm going to put my herbalist hat on, but if you can get it right, it actually doesn't take that long to balance someone's hormones without using that. That's what I do, obviously.
No, I think it's fine, but you could make somebody feel better with estrogen in a couple of days, herbally maybe a couple of weeks or a week. I'm not talking like months, just a little bit longer, because it's not as in your face. Now, maybe some herbs are like that, because some could give you diarrhea like babies.
We're not talking about diarrhea to fix people. That's
I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying, though? Some could probably, really do that quickly.
Totally. But anyway, I find that if I say to patients, you should start to feel better very quickly when we're on the right track. Anyway, we're here to talk about... Not diarrhea. We are here with an amazing bonus interview to talk about natural alternatives that women can use who don't want to use bioidentical hormones.
And there's a lot of them out there.
Totally.
Especially women that either have a family history of breast cancer, women that have had breast cancer and really are afraid.
But there are other people out there that just don't want to use bioidentical hormones. There's a lot, of course. Yeah. So, and it's up to us to educate them, you being the primary person.
And a lot of women that have osteopenia, osteoporosis, that don't want to use hormones. This is a great segue into that. And for that reason, we're meeting with an individual, James Frame, who's the CEO and co-founder of Symphony Natural Health. And he is the manufacturer of a product that if you've watched me at all, you know about this product called Feminescence, which is a maca-based product. It's really unrivaled in the market. I have so many patients that take maca, happens all the time, but they're putting it in their shake in the morning.
This is going to blow your mind.
Yeah, they're putting it in the shake in the morning. And I always ask them, well, how do you know, is there anything else in it? Or how do you know there's maca in it? And what James has done is that he's basically created a product that has, the depth of research that has been done on this product, he also, that I find really just genuinely amazing, is that he really takes care of the Peruvian farmers that take care of these maca plants and these roots. He genuinely cares. You can tell from the interview.
Just let the people watch the interview. I think it speaks.
I'm trying to convey the excitement.
We're excited, but
I've known James for like 3 years, and he's always got more information.
I know. Well, he's a wealth of knowledge, and we're really excited, I should say, to chat with him.
We wanted to kind of bring this full circle and talk about, anybody that's listened to me talk, well, as horrible as that may sound, listening to me talk, but anybody that's listened to me talk about hormone imbalance and kind of how to do this naturally knows that my number one go-to is maca. And of all the maca products that are out there, I really like Feminescence. I met James a few years back at a conference I was speaking at with Tori Hudson, and we met, and James just has this personality that's infectious. He's got a very similar accent, which you'll understand as soon as you hear him speak, to Nat's, and he's got a company that just has a great product. But not only that, but they've done the research, which is really hard to find in this integrative kind of field that we have, is finding these products that are research based. And James knows a lot more about many things than I do, but about maca and the way it's made and where it's grown and what it does in the body. So I'm really excited to have him on. I know Nat uses maca a lot and feminescence. So James, thanks for coming on with us, and we're real excited to have you here.
No, thank you for having me.
So I guess, one of the things that drew me to feminescence was your director of research and development, Dr. Meisner, who I believe has unfortunately recently passed away, but has done a lot of the background research. And can you kind of introduce us to him a little bit and
where he started? Fortunately, he's still alive.
Sorry about that. I thought somebody had passed away.
No, there was another doctor that was connected to us that works in the environmental detox space.
Good.
Sadly passed away.
I need Dr.
Walter Kringoudis.
Okay.
Who's one of the environmental medicine gurus of the world, that was a tragedy. Dr. Meisner and I, we met about 21 years ago. So I've been doing this for a very long time. And we actually met when I was doing my raw material business. So the way I started in natural products was I used to supply raw materials, particularly Kava and St. John's wort from Australia and the South Pacific, to some of the biggest herbal extraction companies around the world. And I was and because we used to get paid based on active ingredients, I was trying to find how could we improve the efficacy of the raw materials that we were supplying. And so I had heard about this world-renowned expert, Dr. Meisner, who is originally from Europe but was working in Australia at the time, and approached him to sort of do some consulting for us, and we'll see if he would do some consulting for us and give us some sort of idea of how we could improve the efficacy of our raw materials. Which I didn't realize at the time, because I was only about 21 at the time, that not many companies did that at all. And so Dr. Meisner sort of came on board with us and did some consulting for us with St. John's wort to start. And he looked at like a whole range of things. He looked at, what were the different varieties of St. John's wort that grew in Australia. He looked at where did they grow in Australia? What were the what was the rainfall? What was the elevation? He also looked at the season. So he looked at what did the active ingredients change through the season. He looked at diurnal cycles, which is the cycle during the day. And because St. John's wort was a flower, there was this cycle during the day, which was profound. I mean, it was so profound that if you harvested St. John's wort during a magical 6-hour window period during the day, the active ingredients were 3 to 4 times higher than if you harvested it 4 hours later. And so we did that, and then he started to sort of research for us Kava and basically sort of looked at all of the different things that we could do with our raw materials to get these efficacy levels as high as we possibly could.
I find that fascinating because, this ancient wisdom that, my background's Chinese medicine, herbal medicine. So this ancient wisdom, we look at that and I feel like we've kind of moved away from that. And now I love the idea of coming back to looking at where things are grown, how you can maximize that efficacy based on the harvesting and the growth and the region that it's grown in, I would imagine as well. Would also have that impact. I think that for me is something that makes me happy.
Well, it's funny. I bet the indigenous people somehow already knew that. Like over the centuries, they figured out that 6-hour window. But from what I know,
same with herbal medicine, same with Chinese medicine. And really where the regions of things were grown and how they were grown, and I think it's fascinating.
So James,
I just on that point, I was going to say what was amazing for us, because we've now worked in about 4 different third world countries, is that 3/4 of the time the indigenous people absolutely knew what was the right way to do, but 25% of the time they didn't. And 25% of the time they would do things which in some cases were detrimental to the efficacy of the herb. And that's been the thing that's really interesting with Dr. Meissner, is he tests every single thing. When we did St. John's wort, we had somebody sitting out there, like in different parts of the country, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for an entire, not the entire season, but segments of the season, taking retention sample after retention sample to find out what was the lunar cycle, what was the diurnal cycle, and it was so profound with St. John's wort that we actually can provide the raw material of St. John's wort at levels which are 3 times the level of a standardized extract. So instead of you getting raw materials and having to concentrate it 4 or 5 times to get it to the level of a standardized extract, our St. John's wort raw material, you actually had to dilute it by 1/3 to get it down to the level of an extract. And that's something that we really haven't looked at when it comes to herbs, is how can you do those incremental things at each step to optimize the efficacy?
So obviously today I will be the only person saying herb. Everybody else is going to say herb. But you've answered the question, but I want you to go into it deeper. We know, well, not everybody, actually, we're probably the only 3 that might know this right now on this video, but that maca has so many different phenotypes and different ways that it can be used. And Meissner obviously you used him as a researcher to make feminescence come about. So rather than having a maca powder that you're just throwing into a shake, how did and why did feminescence come about?
So that's actually a really interesting story, and you might remember, Shawn, not for any other reason than that you're a doctor, but in 1998, Viagra came out, and every single...
I am a man too, so...
But you, at that stage, you were very young and virile, I'm sure.
I was a young,
as you are now, because of all of the things that you do following your own good advice.
Right.
But what was, at that time, Viagra came out and it went gangbusters. And the natural products industry, the herbal industry, just everyone was looking for the herbal Viagra. What could we do to compete with this and have a natural alternative to it? And one of the companies that we were supplying was actually the biggest herbal extraction company in the United States, a company called Pure World Botanicals. And at the time, we were their biggest supplier of Carver and St. John's wort and red clover. And we had done such amazing things with our ingredients to get the efficacy levels higher than anybody had ever done in the world, that they said, hey, can you and Henry go down to Peru, because we found this herb called maca, and we think that it's amazing and could have a potential, use in relation to men and fertility and erectile dysfunction. And can you do your magic and see if you can increase the efficacy and create a supply chain like you've done with all the other herbs to create a better product than what we're already getting. So Henry went down, Dr. Meissner went down and was in Peru for several months, and he came back and then he went back again and basically did a huge amount of due diligence down there. And he met with all of the native experts, he met with farmers, he met with the university, the researchers, every person he could, and also started conducting his own research. And then he came back to me and he said, hey, James, he said, what Pure World are doing for men, that's great. They can head down that path. I think that they're looking at the wrong active ingredients, even for men. But more importantly, everyone's looking at this for men because of Viagra. We should have a look at this for women, because I think that this herb is amazing and has far greater implications for women's health than it does for men. And even more importantly, he says, I think that people don't quite understand how to use it. The Peruvians have used this herb, and this sort of is what I was talking about before. They've used this herb for 2,000 years. But what they haven't realized is that all the different colors of this herb, of maca, that all grow together, they just mix together and make it into a powder. I think that all of these different colors could be different and could even potentially have different effects on the body, different DNA, different active ingredient profiles. And as you know, Shawn, he spent the next 15 years going away, apart from doing our clinical research on feminescence, he went away and also DNA profiled, analytically profiled all of the different types of maca and found out that they're different colours, they have different DNA, different active ingredient profiles, and most importantly, different physiological effects in the body. And we've actually done some research recently with the American Botanical Council, which is the biggest herbal council in the world, and the USDA, the US Department of Agriculture, confirming all of this because they've got concerns about maca that's growing in China and how different that is. And what we've sort of shown, as I said, is that that they're all different. And then what Dr. Meissner's research and other people's research has started to show as well is that these phenotypes have different physiological effects in the body. As an example, we've seen that one type of maca affects fertility in men, but a different type of maca affects fertility in women. One that affects cholesterol, none of the others do. Two affect bone density, none of the others do. One's amazing with menopausal symptoms, the other one less so. So depending on who you're giving it to depends on which types. And so, yeah, it's a long story, but yeah, it's a cool story of sort of how we discovered this herb.
It's really fascinating, James. Is it grown in different areas if it looks different? Like, is it region? Is it associated with a region, or it just all grows together and it's just different colours?
So all the different colours grow together. And no matter which region that you're in. And what's amazing is that you can harvest, for example, black maca seeds from all the black maca that grow in the ground, and you can plant all black maca seeds and every colour will grow again. So it doesn't matter what the colour of the seed is or where it's come from, the environment and the location results in the phenotype expression of all the different colours. But what we found most recently, which is really interesting, is that the different phenotypes, if you grow them in different regions, that they will manifest in a different way. So as an example, red maca has some amazing benefits for women with bone health. But at the same time, red maca has some amazing benefits for men, reducing the size of prostate if men have, issues with prostate and inflamed prostate. And what we found is if you grow red maca in one part of Peru, it's ideal for women. And if you grow red maca in another part of Peru, it's ideal for men. And we've even found that maca that grows in China, they can't grow red maca based on the environment there. So elevation, location, all of these factors play a part in how different phenotypes manifest and what their benefits are based on that.
So I think you hit the nail on the head. When I talk to patients about this, they'll say they're taking maca, and I'm like, well, are you taking the maca that's good for your husband, or are you taking the maca that's good for you? And people don't really think about that because nobody knows there's 13 different phenotypes, and that some are good for this and then some are good for that. And nor do you even kind of know when you buy a powder really what's even in it, because it's a bulk powder. So, I mean, obviously we know the phenotype is super important. And you guys have done a lot of the studies that feminescence has success rates of 84%, where others may only be about 60%. So why is that such a difference? Is it just this process you're talking about?
So phenotype has a profound impact. But the other aspect as well is the efficacy. And just like I was talking about with St. John's wort, we've been able to look at where we grow, how we harvest, how we dry, and how we manufacture, and perfected that to such a degree that feminescence ends up having, based on the active ingredients that we think are important, up to 10 times higher the level of active ingredients than what you would find in raw maca. So apart from using the right types, it's highly concentrated. And then Dr. Meissner's also developed a process which changes the molecular structure and makes it much more bioavailable, and actually has increased the bioavailability or water solubility of feminescence by about 50% as compared to raw maca. So highly concentrated and highly bioavailable, combined with using the right types. That's the key. Those three things are the key.
So how did you decide? Oh, sorry. I was going to say, ask him how you decided to come up with 3 different products. So you have 3 different products for women. How did you come up with those?
So yeah, when we first started, we were looking at hormone balance. And so Dr. Meissner sort of said, right, hormone balance is a key factor when it comes to women's health. Let's have a look at what we can do to help balance and regulate hormones within women. And so he went away and he came up with a formulation, which is the original formulation, which focuses on hormone balance. But as we and other people did more research, we saw that there were individual phenotypes which were critical. For example, there's one phenotype, as I mentioned before, that's ideal for bone health with women. There's another phenotype which is amazing for fertility in women. There's one that has a lot of benefits for menstrual health with women. So, if you are looking at improving fertility and hormone balance and menstrual health, you want to do one product. But obviously, if you're a postmenopausal woman, you're not really that fussed about improving fertility. You want to have the phenotypes which are more beneficial for bone health and for, cholesterol and for mental health, as well as hormone balance. So basically, he looked at the 3 stages of life for women, which are sort of teens through till mid-40s, and then perimenopause, which is sort of mid-40s to early 50s, and then postmenopause, after menopause. And he designed a formulation which all founded on the premise of hormone balance, but then we did other combinations which we added to that original formulation. So we have one for women for each stage of life.
This really interests me, obviously, because, well, women and seeing lots of issues in the clinic, anything to do with hormone imbalance, whether it's fibroids or excess estrogen, PCOS, and everything else in between. But what is interesting is a lot of women have used Maca and obviously not used the correct type, and it's actually done the opposite. It's made their symptoms a lot worse. And I guess probably because it wasn't really working through the HPA axis. And I guess what you're saying is now with this research and understanding, if you're using the right type, it actually does. But this, I think, is also where not just Maca, but many things get a bad rap. I wonder how many other things we don't know about because no one's bothered to do the research like you guys have, that we're using the wrong thing for the wrong, it's basically being misprescribed or overused because it's accessible as well. So I think being able to have this information is so useful, but I'm sure you've definitely seen that women's symptoms have gotten worse because they're not actually using the right type of Maca.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that was most interesting for us when we particularly started working with younger women. We originally started with postmenopausal women, then we did our research on peri, and then we went to younger women. And what was amazing with younger women was that there's so much complexity in women's health. PCOS manifests in multiple different ways. You've got amenorrhea, endometriosis, fibroids, the list goes on, and many women don't even know what they actually have. They just know that something's not working and they go to look at what's going to balance my hormones. And the challenge for us was that we saw that all these different types did different things, and that the premise of most Maca products that you'll find on the shelf is the phenotypes which have benefits for the adrenals and have impact on hormone, or have an impact on energy rather. So if you're, the vast majority of people have low energy, and so you start to take a product that improves your energy and you think that it's going to be doing a lot of these other things. But what was amazing for us was that we saw that when women started to use standard Maca products which focused on the adrenals, then they had conditions like PCOS, for example, or fibroids, it would make things worse. Or if they had estrogen dominance, it would make things worse. Or they had a hyperthyroid, it would make things worse. And what we saw was that the phenotypes that you use that nourish the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, so the whole system within the body with biofeedback, would result in not just increasing hormones, but it would also work on balancing or reducing the production of them. So when you're looking at PCOS, if you're triggering the adrenals, it's going to make it worse. Whereas if you nourish the HPA, it's going to bring your testosterone down, increase your estrogen, recalibrate that system. And the other thing, as we know with PCOS, is metabolism. What controls metabolism and blood sugar? hypothalamus controls metabolism and blood sugar, insulin, and glucagon, which are hormones. So if we're balancing and regulating all of those hormones, we start to see amazing results. So we would have patients and customers who had used normal maca for PCOS and for estrogen dominance and for hypothyroid, and they would come to us and say, oh, no, I've used it. And we'd say, no, but it's a different type. It works differently. And they'd use feminescence, and they would all of a sudden start to improve and start to get some amazing results, and couldn't comprehend that they use the wrong type, it gets worse. They use the right type and it gets better. So it's pretty profound.
It is. It's really, really interesting. Let's talk a little bit about that whole idea also of, you know, how a lot of women are using the pill, obviously, for issues exactly like you're talking about, PCOS, potentially amenorrhea. I guess this is something that, you know, we know the pill can't fix this, but there's not a lot of alternatives out there that are very well researched. So I wonder, you know, how this could actually act as an alternative to the pill.
Yeah, it's a great alternative, because the thing with the pill is that, you know, one of the statistics I quote over here in the United States is that 20% of women under the age of 36 are on the pill for off prescription. So they're not there for contraception. They're using it for regulation of cycle, PMS, acne, bloating, PCOS, amenorrhea, like all of those conditions. The trouble with the pill, though, is that the pill introduces hormones into a woman's body and manipulates her hormones and masks symptoms and sort of, you know, hides those symptoms. Because women will often come off birth control 5, 10, 15 years later, and all of their symptoms will come back and often come back worse. And so what's special about feminescence is that instead of introducing hormones, by nourishing the body's hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, it's balancing and regulating the body's own hormone production. So it's actually addressing the root cause issue of many of these, you know, issues, which is the body's own hormone imbalance. The other thing that sort of happens with hormone imbalance, and I know it's one of Shawn's favorite topics, is estrogen dominance. And what's really interesting that we found is that feminescence has particular actives which nourish the HPA. But what it also has is active constituents called glucosinolates. And glucosinolates are really famous for being high in veggies like broccoli and Brussels sprouts. And we've got products like DIM, and what those products look at doing is helping the body metabolize and process hormones. So if we have too many hormones, it helps the body sort of clean and detoxify it, you know, in very simple terms. And what we found, however, is that the particular glucosinolate profiles in particular phenotypes, if we grow them in areas, we can get them very high and to very high levels. And so when you combine the process of balancing and regulating the body's hormone production, as well as supporting the body's detoxification of hormones and metabolism of hormones, you're sort of killing two birds with one stone, which enables us to have a major impact on, you know, so many different conditions because of the, you know, that multiple functionality.
I think also post-pill too, it's very useful as well after, you know, a woman has been on the pill, and for the same reason, it's if they're using it to try and actually treat a problem, which it can never do. Exactly for that, it's going to help to look after those areas of the body that probably needed sorting out before going on that. How about when we talk about
on that subject, the only thing I would say is to be patient, because you remember the pills manipulated your system, and it's, you know, it's sort of coming in with a sledgehammer of manipulating and controlling the system. And what we're trying to do, and same with Chinese traditional medicine, we're trying to recalibrate the system. And that can take time as the body gets into more balance. But, you know, it's a little bit like fitness. It takes time to get fit, but once you're fit, you get healthier and healthier, and you actually need to do less and less work. That's often, you know, once women have been on feminescence for 3 or 4 or 5 months, they often go to half the dose they started, because the body is recalibrated and it's actually got healthier. It's quite profound, you know, people sort of realizing that they've turned back their biological clock and their body's working better than it did 6 months ago because they've, you know, recalibrated.
I think just to add to that also is that often young women are going on the pill at an age where they haven't actually fully developed yet. So you're halting that process. And then when they come off the pill, you know, maybe 8 years later, they've got to restart that whole process again. So, or kick off from where they left off. So if they never actually had a regular cycle, it's exactly what you're saying. You've got to be really patient. How about fertility, James, in your experience with feminescence? Let's talk about supporting the role of the hormones through fertility.
Yeah, so fertility is one of those ones that has the biggest emotional impact on our company, shall we say, because, you know, it's great when you're able to reduce a woman's menopausal symptoms and improve a whole range of aspects of their health. But when you have a woman coming to you who has been trying to have children for a decade or has done IVF 4 or 5 times and hasn't been able to conceive and goes on feminescence, and, you know, 4 months later you get the email, thank you, I'm pregnant. It's profound. And so much so that, you know, we ended up getting some amazing fertility experts join our medical board, and a lot of them who work with us and do education for us. We even have, you know, one of Australia's best-selling authors for fertility and preconception, Jan Roberts, whose co-author was Francesca Naish, who started the Jocelyn Centre, which is one of probably Australia's most famous fertility clinics. And Jan has worked presenting for Foresight, which is one of the top preconception research organisations in the United Kingdom, throughout Australia and Asia, all because, you know, the foundation of fertility and is hormone balance. And what's amazing is that there's been a number of books that have come out talking about how birth control now is probably the #1 cause of infertility in women in the Western world. And why is it the cause of infertility? Well, it causes, you know, that hormone imbalance that you were talking about. And what's the remedy for this issue that's being caused by birth control is to come back and recalibrate the body's own production of hormones, which is exactly what feminescence does. So, yeah, it's that's an area that we do a lot with, and we get our most amazing testimonials and thank you letters come from people who have had profound issues with trying to conceive and go on feminescence. And I'm not trying to say feminescence is the silver magic bullet. Feminescence is the perfect start, but, you know, there's a reason that we have all of these doctors who are specialists in preconception health, because they talk about detoxification, they talk about high concentrations of particular vitamins and minerals, which are key. They talk about exercise, they talk about psychological issues relating to stress, and because that's a big factor when you're having challenges conceiving. So it's not just one thing, but that hormone balance is sort of the foundation upon which all of that is built.
So one of the things that I see daily is menopause and obviously perimenopause, but the pain points, we've talked about a ton of them, but the big elephant in the room, and that was a horrible segue into weight gain. By the way, I did not mean to do that. But how does this affect weight gain?
So that's an interesting one, because obviously when we did clinical trials on hormone balance and menopausal symptoms, we're looking at hot flushes and night sweats and mood swings and libido and sleep and energy and all of those things. But weight is a big factor that, you know, as you mentioned, occurs and is a big area when it comes to menopause that hits women when they go through menopause. And what's interesting about feminescence is that we have seen it have an impact in multiple areas which impact weight. And we can't pinpoint exactly what it is, but we can give an indication of the multiple areas that we've seen it have an impact. And one of them obviously is metabolism. The hypothalamus controls metabolism. In our clinical trials, you know, we saw women reduce their weight after about 4 months on average. But we also saw women increase calcium and iron levels in their blood from taking feminescence. And we were, we're trying to figure it out. When we did figure it out, it was connected to metabolism. The other area which impacts weight as women get older, obviously, is hormone imbalance and cortisol and stress and lack of sleep. And so we see all of that. We see cortisol reduction when women take feminescence. We see improvements in sleep, which obviously has an impact on body weight as well. And then the other big area is insulin. And insulin and glucagon, a lot of people aren't aware that those are actually hormones. And when we talk about blood sugar and the imbalances, is, many people are heading towards type 2 diabetes because of poor diets. But because feminescence works on balancing and regulating hormones, some of the hormones it also impacts is insulin and glucagon, which help calibrate and rebalance blood sugar as well. So we've sort of seen all of those factors get impacted, and the reason we know is because of medications and a lot of our doctors, tracking and tracing these different hormones and symptoms and saying, I had a patient who had an improvement in weight and it was because of this, and then another one, I saw it because of this. So yeah, that's it's an interesting one. And the thing is that you want a product that will hit all of those factors, because you never know what it is with each individual woman. It's different.
Yeah, I think that's where it's particularly useful, is that so many variations in hormone imbalance it's applicable for. So I really love that, and really safe, really, really safe if you're using it properly. I mean, we always want to encourage people to seek the right type of professional help. However, this is also why you've got products that are specific for different things. People can generally, look at where they are in their life cycle and work out what's going to be appropriate for them. So I love that. There's lots of other reasons, I guess, that we probably haven't gone into that are still what you've mentioned, I guess, things like hair, skin and nails, and even mood and balancing mood and those sorts of things. I mean, it's all under the same category of hormones. And I know that we've had obviously many experts that we've all talked to these points and how relevant something really simple like maca, the right type of maca, can actually be. Is there anything else that we've missed, James, that we need to talk about, do you think, before we have to say goodbye?
No, not really. I mean, I just I think that, to your point, one of the things is that when the Women's Health Initiative came out in 2002, many doctors and many women got scared and turned away from hormones, and we sort of forgot why hormones was such a big thing. When in the old days, women would go on hormones once they got to perimenopause, because we knew that hormones were the most important thing for cardiovascular health. We knew that hormones were the most important thing for bone density. We knew that hormones were one of the most important things for mental health, not to mention menopausal symptoms and hair, skin and nails. Elasticity of skin is controlled by estrogen, and hair loss because of estrogen testosterone imbalances. And so the thing for us is that we have, we're very much aligned with exactly what your talks are about, which is empowering women and understanding why hormones are so important. And the only thing that I would highlight, and the reason that we're obviously talking about feminescence, is that feminescence to date is the only maca product and the only natural product that has published clinical trials showing statistically significant effects on hormones in women of all ages, especially peri and postmenopause. And I mean, that's profound, because you go into a shop or you will see 100 different products talking about hormone balance. And yet when you go to the clinical trials, there is only really feminescence. And that's why, Shawn, he looked at that, joined our medical team, because he was like, wow, this is for real. And he met us through Tori Hudson, where he was talking, and Tori Hudson's probably regarded as the top naturopathic doctor in the United States for women's health. And, she's one of those gurus as well. And she's on our medical board as well, because she's like, no, this is the only one I've found as well. So it's, finding those hormone balance is profoundly important, but finding something that actually has that effect is key, I think. Slightly biased, of course, but
No, it's true though. I mean, you obviously are onto something, and I recommend it all the time. And so many women right now are taking maca, and I know we could talk about this forever, but as Nat is sitting there, she's actually boarding a plane in like 5 minutes to come here so we can start this conference. So to finish everything off, if anybody out there is interested in getting feminescence, if you've been living under a rock or haven't seen me and heard me talk about it a lot, Symphony Natural Health, James's company, or you have a health professional where it's available with other integrative people like myself or Nat, you can get feminescence pretty much at most health food stores, like in this country, like Whole Foods and Sprouts and the bigger chains. But we've organized through James, and for our listeners, if you are interested in it, you can go to feminescence.net, which is, we'll leave the link for you, but they're giving you an offer today that's a buy 2 boxes and get 1 free. And you can also get free shipping. So, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. The other thing I like about feminescence is that the price point is really great too. It's not like so super high that anybody can't at least try it. And so at a buy 2, get 1 free, I mean, that drives the price down to pretty close to like $20, $25 a box. So that's great, James. I wanted to thank you for that.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you, James, so much for taking the time to chat with us. You're right. My plane started boarding 4 minutes ago, so I need. We're going to wrap. We covered everything, and I think there's a lot for people to learn from this. So also, of course, go over and check out your website and all the information over there. There's heaps of other valuable stuff there too. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. We really appreciate it.
Have a safe flight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Take care, James.
Bye-bye.
So what I really loved the most about that.
His accent?
Oh, well, I'm in good company with 2 of our guests.
Yeah.
Was more about this idea, and it makes so much sense as a herbalist, that there are qualities associated to different colours of the maca. That I was like, oh yeah, that makes, and that's right, the phenotypes. But if you're taking the complete, how do you know what you're taking? And more than likely, if you are taking a maca supplement, it's probably just all of them in one.
Yeah.
Which
well,
means
the thing I always tell patients is, look, if you're taking a maca powder, how do you know you're not taking the maca phenotype that is for men?
That's right.
And or James has even said, if red is grown somewhere else, it can take on the constituency of that soil. So he makes sure he takes all the guesswork out.
But also more
if
to
it's
the
menopause,
point,
perimenopause,
yes.
Fertility, they have taken all of the guesswork out and made these products, these 3 products, so that you don't have to worry about it.
More to the point, how often do you see this, and I certainly do, that people self-prescribe, and maca is one of the ones that people would self-prescribe, but they say to me, oh, it didn't even make a difference. It didn't make me feel better.
It doesn't work because it's probably not maca.
Probably not the right one.
Yeah.
So anyway, we loved chatting with James, and here's a wealth of knowledge. You can go and check out the website. We've got the details here for you. You should go and absolutely
Things
do
to
that.
notice. One thing I noticed in the 3 people that we have on here from Australia,
Check out.
other than the accents, they're all beautiful.
Oh, that's kind.
And they all have great hair.
Oh, yeah.
James's hair is astounding.
You loved it.
It's got a mind of its own.
Yeah, it was awesome.
But they're all gorgeous. We love their accents, and they all have great hair. So, I mean, I got to visit there now.
That'll be next. Look out, Australia.
Yeah.
He's coming. Make sure you take the opportunity for that buy 2, get 1 free. That's sensational.
Oh, yeah.
Well.
What a great deal that is.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
And available in Australia as well as the US, which makes me happy because so many things we talk about, actually most things we've talked about are available in both countries. So we're going to say bye for now. We hope you enjoyed this interview, and we're really excited for you to enjoy the real truth about hormones.